for you today. Tesla will come to India early next year, says India's Transport Minister Nitin Gadkari. The electric car maker will start with sales and then look at assembly and manufacturing. Agri-tech startup Agromelon raised 2 crore rupees from angel investors participating from the Middle East. Startup will use the capital in setting up 500 micro farms in the states of Tamil Nadu, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Music record label Tips Industries announces a global deal with social media giant Facebook to license its music for videos and other social experiences across Facebook and Instagram. With the move, Facebook and Instagram users will be able to add Tips music catalog to their posts and stories. Alibaba shares plunge about 8% for second straight session as China ramps up pressure. Chinese regulators ordered Alibaba affiliate Ant Group to rectify its businesses and comply with regulatory requirements. First up, Indian online gaming industry is growing at an exponential rate and is expected to be worth $1.1 billion by 2021. Long months of lockdown led to the sector experiencing drastic growth at the beginning of 2020, so much so that users doubled between February and end of the year. Now, according to a study by KPMG, gaming habits went through a drastic transformation during this period as the average age group of online gamers increased from 18 to 35 years to almost 18 to 55 years. From 10 operators and 50 lakh users just 4 years ago, fantasy gaming today commands upwards of 10 crore users spread across more than 150 players. To talk about the growth and the challenges the industry faces, joining me now is Bhavin Pandya, co-founder and CEO of Games 24/7. Bhavin, many thanks for joining us today. While the lockdown increased usage and engagement for the gaming sector, what is the long-term impact of the pandemic going to be for the industry?
First of all, Shruti, thank you for having me on the show again. We appreciate that. To your question about the user engagement due to the pandemic, our view is that the kind of exposure online games have gotten during this pandemic and even now, the long term augurs really well. I think we have a very bright future ahead of us, given the kind of exposure online games have seen in the last few months.
Okay. A bright future ahead. But, Bhavin, despite India's skill gaming sector's growth, we've seen, bans in some states, including an ordinance in Tamil Nadu. This definitely has put a spanner in the works of this fast growing arena. Your comments on that?
So, in all of the states, so recently there have been ordinances in Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. And we have contested all of these state bans in the various high courts, right? Because in our view, it is unconstitutional, simply put, right? These bans are violating sections, Articles 19(1)(g) of the Constitution, which is our fundamental right to carry out a business carrying out a business in games of skill. And because of that, we believe that jurisprudence will prevail and that we will come out on top here.
Okay. Sure, Bhavin, but there are reports of people being driven to suicide and financial issues that was said to be one of the primary reasons prompting state governments to really crack the whip. You claim to be on a mission to build a community of responsible online gamers. How are you promoting responsible gaming?
Yeah, so let me take a step back, Shruti, and talk a little bit about this. I think this is a very good question that you asked, right? When you ban all of this, what do you really do, right? You sort of give way for really unscrupulous operators to come into this space and operate, right? So what has happened is that recently in Telangana, they unearthed a 1,500 crore gambling ring, right? Yeah. Despite Telangana having banned online games completely, right? And there are users who are playing using fake GPS, where we're as legitimate rummy operators stopping all of this. There are other unscrupulous players who are coming in and sort of asking people to use fake GPS and continue the games. The right reaction or the response to this has to be to regulate this space, right? Yeah. And in this area, unlike the West, what India has already done is they've already set up self-regulatory regimes with the online federation, Rummy Federation, and with FIFs for fantasy sports, where there are regulations, that regulatory bodies that have been set up, which the governments need to work with to sort of try and address this. As for us, in terms of advocating responsible playing, look, we spend a lot of our energy in really trying to understand player behavior using data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning. And once we do that, once we identify players who who sort of might not be playing rummy just as or fantasy sports just as a form of entertainment. One of the things that we do is we sort of have them take a survey and have them consult with a trained counselor. You're a counselor who's been trained by the iGaming Academy in the UK. And basis that, the counselor will give us a recommendation whether we should sort of reduce these people from playing, or we should sort of, give them more information, have them self-exclude themselves on our platform. And we're working very closely with the other operators and the industry body, which is the Online Rummy Federation, to make sure that players are playing responsibly.
Okay, that's responsible gaming from your side. I want to bring up something that you were just mentioning earlier. The biggest challenge that fantasy sports really faces today is regulatory uncertainty. Now, what is Game24's stance on the Niti Aayog draft guidelines that were recently released? A part of the industry is trying to distinguish fantasy sports from online gaming. Your views on that?
Views on the Niti Aayog bit or the second bit where they're trying to distinguish?
Let's talk about the Niti Aayog bit first.
All right. So on the Niti Aayog, it's really, really heartening to see the recent draft paper by Niti Aayog, right? Where they're very rightly calling out the fact that fantasy sports needs regulation in India. A broad strokes ban or prohibition is not going to work because it is a game of skill at the end of the day, right? The high courts of Rajasthan, Haryana, of Punjab and Haryana, and then the High Court of Rajasthan have both ruled that fantasy sports are a game of skill, and therefore, they should be allowed. They're a legitimate business activity. And so Niti Aayog is sort of propagating for that. They also talk about how it is under Section 19(1)(g) of the Constitution that they should be able to offer these games, right? So that's all great. I think that's the right direction in which to go. I think the only thing that I would say here is that it needs to be slightly broader, because all online games of skill, including fantasy sports, are struggling with the same kinds of problems. There's these state-by-state Byzantine laws that everyone has to deal with and go through, right? But instead, if it was more inclusive, if the Niti Aayog paper was more inclusive, then no one would have to sort of separately set up these things for different games of skill, because eventually they all come under the gamut of games of skill. Okay,
so the need of the hour is more inclusive laws. Bhavin, once the legal issues are out of the way, how bullish are you really on India's fantasy gaming space in the coming years? FICCI and KPMG have estimated the fantasy and gaming market to be worth billions of dollars.
Oh, extremely bullish, right? That's the short answer. I think what the pandemic has done is really brought to the fore a lot of concerns and also highlighted this sector, both positively and negatively. But I think as we sort of go through some of these teething pains and solve some of these issues around regulation, around bans, around making sure that we have an inclusive real money, skill games industry, the future is very, very bright, especially because we have a huge demographic tailwind, right? We have a lot of young people in India who are now being exposed to online games and are really wanting different forms of entertainment.
Okay. But Bhavin, so far the popular disciplines have been cricket and football, and increasingly, in popularity have been the likes of kabaddi and basketball. But do you foresee a big opportunity for indigenous game developers and indigenous online games that promote Indian culture and characters in the years to come?
Yes, in the long run, absolutely. I think, again, like I said, the big reason is a very young population that we have that is getting exposed to games very early on. And as a way to sort of teach them about our culture, teach them about what a rich history our country has had, I think some of these games will do a fantastic job, right? But the right here, right now is slightly different. I think right now people are just trying to sort of play a lot more skill-based games like fantasy sports, rummy, chess, etc. But I think with time, as our infrastructure improves, we will be in a place to build really solid games that will have indigenous characters, that will have historical characters that will help that ecosystem grow as well.
Okay, so do you believe that this homegrown ecosystem, indigenous games and esports and gaming, could bridge the gap between the opportunities in bigger cities and smaller towns? Also, will you be looking at going deeper into tier 3 and tier 4 markets?
So to answer the first part of your question about esports, right now, esports, Shruti, is very popular in two gaming categories. One is combat games, where we're trying to sort of capture, kill, etc. And the other is sports, like FIFA 19, FIFA 20, those kinds of games, right? And in that, we're already seeing the way that the esports are proliferating and are percolating through our country, that a lot of small towns are getting interested in competing in esports with some of the other folks in bigger, larger cities, right? So that's already happening. As far as we're concerned, our focus right now is on the real money skill games space. As far as India is concerned, and through that, we're obviously going to go deeper in the tier 3, tier 4 markets. And that's the plan as of now.
So, so I was about to ask you the way forward for games 24/7, and if there are any new games in the pipeline. So you're saying skill-based games you're going to focus on, and casual gaming again will be a big focus area for you as well.
It absolutely will, and that's really where our new games are coming out, because like I said, that as far as casual games are concerned, right now in India, you have a casual player but not a casual payer. Monetizing casual games is very hard, and so what we're trying to really do is look at the West, where the demand for these kinds of games is very, very high. And so we're the first company that is going to do real money games, and casual games in worldwide, so to speak. Real money games in India and our other games internationally, our casual games internationally.
All right. Before I let you go, Bhavin, you already have investors like Tiger Global and the Rhine Group. Would you be looking at raising more funds to fuel your growth plans?
So right now, we've been profitable for a while. We continue to be profitable. So right now, we're not looking to raise funds. But if there are good opportunities around the corner, we're always happy to talk, right? But not actively looking.
All right, Bhavin. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much, Shruti, for having me.
Thank you, Bhavin. On that note, it's time for us to take a short break. Up next, we take stock of 2020 with Avnish Bajaj of Matrix Partners. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Startup Street. As we close 2020, my colleague Mugdha Warrier caught up with Avnish Bajaj, Managing Director of Matrix Partners India, on what the big learnings and takeaways were for this year and what to look forward to in 2021. She began by asking him about the key learnings from this year. Listen in.
Yeah, Mugdha, thank you for having me on. What a crazy year. My biggest learning is how wrong everybody was. So if you look at, would you have thought in March, April that the US would be the worst affected, that we would be sitting in India looking like we are okay, it's not too bad, Western world is getting shut down. I think we should count our blessings as a nation, because it was a huge worry that we would end up at the other extreme. Lockdowns didn't work, and by the way, just a quick thought on that is, lockdowns are meant to enforce social distancing. In a dense country like India, it actually enforces social density. And I have seen this, the staff at home, staff in the office, everybody has antibodies already. So some level of, herd immunity went through. Vaccines, who knew we would have vaccines, right, by the end of the year? So I think everybody was wrong. And that is something to keep in perspective. There were worries about this is the black swan, and it ended up being a very good year for some of the venture funds. To answer your question, 3 buckets. Businesses really badly affected, so almost shut down with lockdowns. Businesses and then businesses affected, like the travel businesses that you mentioned, and then the businesses that unexpectedly got tailwinds, right? But let me give a little bit of a perspective to this, Mugdha, because I'm still not clear how much of this is sticky and how much of this will go away. And will we move from COVID tailwinds to post-vaccine headwinds, right? And I think the context here is important. We had Demon in 2016, which took payments to the next level. I know it was panned, but for digital, it was very good. We had Geo in 2016 again, but I think the real Geo effect happened in 18 and 19. I don't think people get it or think about it that way. TikTok, in my view, I'm happy it's banned. We'll talk about that. But I think it changed video consumption. And video happened in India in 18 and 19. And deep penetration of the internet happened in India in 18 and 19. If the pandemic had happened in 16, 17, or 18, we would not have seen the tailwinds that we saw. It is because everybody was ready. There is a classic, you consume content and communication, then you go to commerce. WhatsApp got you communication, TikTok got you content, and therefore commerce took off, right? So I think it was almost, in some ways, the right timing. The companies that were deeply affected, I would say, one might be surprised that 2021 might turn out to be the the best year for these companies because they took the opportunity to fix their cost structures. So if revenue was pushed out a year, I think profitability has been pulled in by more than a year. And I think that's the bigger narrative to keep in mind. A lot of these companies are going to be and everything has become more tech enabled. So the cost structures have become much more, have much higher operating leverage. The companies you mentioned did get tailwinds. EdTech got tailwinds, payment got tailwinds, all these companies got tailwinds, Daily Hunt got tailwinds. But the ones with headwinds, I guess my submission is the story is not fully written yet. 2021, the ones that had tailwinds might slow down, and the ones that had headwinds might actually see a much better year on profitability for sure, and maybe overall as well.
The focus is back on profitability. But Avnish, I want to take you up on what you said. You mentioned the TikTok app ban, and that really has been, a significant event for Indian entrepreneurs this year. The ban on several Chinese apps, it's opened up a whole new opportunity for Indian entrepreneurs to come up in this space. In fact, a recent Redseer report showed that, your portfolio company, Daily Hunt's Josh app has seen a lot of traction since the ban on the Chinese apps, including TikTok. But do you see this as being sticky, or do you see this as a short-term spike? What are you looking at in this sector? Are you looking to make more investments in this space?
Yeah, so I would say I have kind of come full circle in this thought process. I'm a big believer in globalization and a big believer that barriers should not be erected. But at the same time, when you think about the fact that China doesn't allow overseas companies to operate, one needs to think whether that is the right answer. Then if you think about the fact that our entrepreneurs have been really working very hard and then they get deluged with all these things from overseas, should there be some level of, just like in most industries, you get some kind of SOP and protection in the early years, should there be something? So net, national security ultimately trumps everything. So net, I guess it's a good thing with mixed feelings, and I'll tell you the mixed feelings. I don't think we should throw the baby out with the bathwater. You are aware what happened with TikTok in the US, and one of the biggest reasons why China was opposed to the sale, at least was covered in the media, is because of their artificial intelligence algorithms. That's what we need to understand, that these are not just apps that were coming, just the capital that was coming, but something very good has been built. So my view is, I think it will be sticky for some period of time. I think our entrepreneurs need to take full advantage of it. They deserve a break, they got a break, and they should definitely, but they should not assume that, oh, that was just a Chinese app because we have this impression about things that are made in China. These are real technology-driven, artificial intelligence-driven data science businesses. And so we need to replicate that. Josh is, in that report, it was good to see it is close to 50% market share and it's doing very well. And if you look at the comments, the engagement, I think it's up to these companies to make that base sticky and to see what was good about, TikTok and some of these other apps. But yes, very optimistic because we think about these as thin stack businesses, technology-driven businesses. If you look at Facebook, if you look at Google, where is the Facebook of India? It's Facebook. Where's the Instagram of India? Where's the WhatsApp of India? Where's the Google? All these thin stack businesses got dominated by globals. And then, of course, by Chinese also. So Indian entrepreneurs never got a chance. So understanding, though, that these thin stack businesses are built with very high technology is critical for them to win the next wave. And I'm optimistic. I think with video coming on, hopefully our entrepreneurs have a great level playing field or maybe even an advantage, including in sectors like gaming.
But Avnish, are you looking at making more investments in this space? Of course, you have Daily Hunt and its Josh app, but are you looking at any more investments in this short video platform space?
I guess Josh, short video is actually too narrow a definition. Are we looking to make more investments in, like I said, these thin stack use cases? Absolutely. And let me tell you, even in China, there's a company called Kuaishu, which is also a short video, but I think the duration is maybe 30 seconds to 1 minute. So as the market deepens, if you look at your content consumption or my content consumption, we will be watching different channels. So yes, we have an open mind, but the issue is not the format. So it's not about whether short video or long video. It's more about the customer. Which customer are you targeting? Gen Z is different from Gen X, is different from millennials. And I think there are going to be multiple players. I would say where we are So absolutely open to it and looking, but gaming, where we have an investment in Zupi also, I think gaming is going to see the next 5 to 10 years is going to see a lot of new company creation.
Avnish, another important trend that I want to ask you about is, of course, the consolidation that we have seen this year across multiple sectors. We have seen that in e-pharma. We're also seeing that in the grocery segment with Big Basket. Do you see this trend continuing even in 2021? Because of the COVID impact on multiple sectors and businesses, and of course the larger conglomerates like Tata's and the Reliance looking more aggressively at startups. Do you see this continuing next year? And what are the sectors that you expect this to happen in?
So, globally, there are two big kind of end games in startup investing. It's M&A or it's IPO. And I think and in India, both have been lagging. And the reason it's been lagging is not the problem. The reason it's been lagging is the real problem underlying is the market was not deep enough, right? So I would say the COVID impact that you're mentioning is what we discussed earlier, which is market is deepening. Real businesses are getting set up. And there is FOMO, correctly so, by the large industrial houses that they are missing this whole digital wave. So I think there are two types of plays that we'll see. We'll see defense and we'll see offense. So in defense, you had mentioned something about low margin, pharmacy, grocery. I think these are classic businesses where you need to bulk up and scale in order to make money. Okay, so I think those are defensive potential plays which will come together. Then you will see the offense. I think Tata is a little bit more, Jio seems to be playing a little bit more. They are stitching stuff together because they believe they have a right to win through the pipe that they have. And who knows, they may be right, they may not be right, who knows. Tata is clearly playing offense. So if you look at, some of this has been covered in the media, a lot of the Jio deals look like they're distressed companies, which is okay. That's also part of M&A exit. But the real M&A is when good companies are getting bought at market prices. And Big Basket is a good company that is getting bought at market price. Some of the other rumored ones, I don't know how true they are by the Tata Group. Naspers is also looking at it. So I think it's a great thing. But I think I would always keep it in perspective that there's offense and there's defense. I think you'll see Amazon, Flipkart / Walmart. I think all of these guys. So you have this Jio ecosystem, you have Amazon ecosystem, you have Flipkart, Walmart ecosystem, and now you have these industrial houses. Maybe the others will also jump in. I think it's a great thing.
You talked about how there are two exits in the startup ecosystem. One is M&A and one is, of course, IPO. And, there seems to be a big pipeline of potential IPOs for 2021. Are there any companies in your portfolio that could, potentially go public in 2021 or in the coming years?
2021 is a little bit too close to call, but 2022 onwards, absolutely. I'll go back to the earlier comment on regulations changing, and we have to keep in mind that we can't. I told you what is good for us is good and what is not good. But IPO regulation, this overseas listing that the government is going to do or talking about, it's outstanding. That is the last piece of the puzzle that India needs, right? If companies can go, not because companies don't want to list in India, but the reality is the investor set overseas is more open to loss-making companies, which sometimes these are, right? As you look at all the IPOs. So I think we have to give government credit, and I hope they bring that notification out. And I have one more ask, which is on taxation to be put private. We get taxed more than public market listings. Why should that be the case? We actually take more risk, right? So we have to take the bad with the good, but I hope it turns out to be all good from everybody. In our portfolio, a bunch of them. You mentioned Daily Hunt. Ola is profitable, definitely looking at IPO. Ola Electric, which is not talked about enough. I mean, that is a company. Electric has serious tailwinds. So then we have a bunch of other companies, Practo, 5-Star, Off Business. So now 5-Star, Off Business, these are all profitable companies. Daily Hunt would be profitable. Ola is profitable. So I think very much on the cusp.
Not 2021, but 2023 will be a big year for IPOs in the Indian startup industry. That's the word coming in from Avnish Bajaj of Matrix Partners India. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Startup Street. More news and updates coming up on the other side.